Boy, think about that penalty for Detroit in the playoff race.
Yeah.
I mean, at that moment, they're running out of margin for error, and they've got all the momentum in that game. You're 3 minutes away from getting into overtime, but there was almost zero chance the Wild were going to win that game in regulation. And the most careless tripping penalty, not anywhere close to the play, and he just stuck his stick in there. I mean, it wasn't like he was skating by and it accidentally was there. He stuck his stick in his skates. It was one of the dumbest penalties that I've seen.
Welcome back to Worst Seats in the House. Mike Russo, Anthony LaPanta coming to you on a beautiful Monday night live from Tuttle's. Thanks for everybody for coming on out. Packed house. We got some new swag here if you ask a good question during the show. Thanks to our newest sponsor as well, Stretch Lab. We'll be doing a drawing after the show for 3 50-minute stretches, Anthony.
I could use some stretching.
Yes, I could see that. And then one thing I did want to make a little housekeeping item is we are looking to do a live show August 15th now. I think we've been saying August 16th. April. How many times have I done that?
I don't know, but I haven't. My August schedule is really up in the air right now.
I will be available August 15th. April 15th, not April 16th, because if the Wild start on the road, most likely we'll be traveling that day. So April 15th. So stay tuned to that on where that is going to be on our social media, because actually that will be our next podcast will be a live show. So definitely hang out there.
Playoff preview.
Yeah, definitely a playoff preview. And Dallas and Minnesota, it's basically cinched in stone. The Colorado Avalanche could have made it cinched in stone last night, but they lost to Robert Thomas and the St. Louis Blues. Robert had a hat trick, and he's absolutely on fire right now. But
as are the Blues.
Yeah, as are the Blues, and as are the Flyers in the East. The Blues still trying to make a playoffs. I think right now I still like Nashville, although Minnesota is going to be going in there this week. So we'll see if the Wild have anything to do with that. We'll talk about the Wild's newest signing later in the show. But let's talk about this potential Dallas-Minnesota series. Wild coming off back-to-back wins at Ottawa, at Detroit. Boldy and Kaprizov starting to score again and, starting to look a little bit more like themselves.
Yeah, really, it's a 3-game run because they won the last game at home as well. And that was a stretch that John Hines had talked to us before this stretch in the schedule. They had the 4 days off, and then it was going to be 8 games and 13 nights to the end of the season. And he looked at that these 3 and 4, and I think that was, if you read between the lines, he was talking about whether or not they were going to try and rest guys or how hard they were going to push, and wanted to see where they were after those 3 games. And if second place was within reach. And it is, because they won all 3 of them. Dallas lost to Colorado, and now that head-to-head game on the next trip between the Wild and the Stars becomes huge. I think right now Minnesota has shown that they've got the ability that we saw early in the year to score their way out of trouble. And the Detroit game on Sunday was a perfect example. I thought the first period was a kind of an uneventful, not much going on period. Wild were all over them and beat the hell out of them in the second, but then their game got away from them, and yet they were still able to make the big play on the special teams and score their way out of trouble. And when this team was at their best early in the year, they weren't winning a lot of 5-4 games, but every once in a while when they had to, they could. Yeah. And you need Kaprizov and Boldy to be on top of their game, and they are right now.
It was a lot like last year's game there. Only the Wild were the ones doing the comeback last year there. They always seem to play Wild games in that Little Caesars Arena. Really uncharacteristic and careless penalty by Patrick Kane gave the Wild.
Boy, think about that penalty for Detroit in the playoff race.
Yeah.
I mean, at that moment, they're running out of margin for error. And they've got all the momentum in that game. You're 3 minutes away from getting into overtime, but there was almost zero chance the Wild were going to win that game in regulation. And the most careless tripping penalty, not anywhere close to the play, and he just stuck his stick in there. I mean, it wasn't like he was skating by and it accidentally was there. He stuck his stick in his skates. It was It was one of the dumbest penalties that I've seen.
Yeah, from a veteran that knows better, and for a team that hasn't made the playoffs in a decade. And it really, I actually kind of felt bad for Kane afterwards because you just knew the Wild were going to score, right? I mean, they were trying to set up Kaprizov. They tried to set him up at the bumper. They tried to set him up at the back door. And then finally, he's just the hell with it. Send me in the right circle. And
Kane had been a big part of their comeback.
Yes.
He was
unbelievable.
He had missed another opportunity earlier in the game, a grade A. And
if they miss the playoffs, Anthony, Detroit is going to have to, I don't know if Yzerman, if they let him go or if he just becomes the president and they promote, a Chris Draper or a Sean Horkoff. But suddenly it's funny because earlier this season, before we even knew that the Quinn Hughes trade was going to happen, we knew the Wild were going to go big game hunting, and they were hoping that, all right, maybe Buffalo stink and we go after Tage Thompson. Maybe Detroit would stink and they go after Dylan Larkin. Then all of a sudden, comfortably, especially in January, the Red Wings were in the playoffs, and you're thinking, and Buffalo is making it, so you think both are pipe dreams. Now going into the offseason, if Detroit misses, they're going to have to make some moves. Maybe a Larkin's available in Toronto, Austin, Ottawa, Brady. I mean, they're going to be some interesting.
It'll be interesting for sure. And I had remembered that when Detroit was in St. Paul, and I went back to look it up to confirm, they were tied for second in the NHL. Yeah. They were ahead of Minnesota at that point, tied for second in the NHL after they lost in overtime in St. Paul, and then they won in Winnipeg like 2 nights later. And at that point, they were tied for second. Only Colorado was ahead of them. And to look at where they are now, they're 31st in the league since that point. Only Vancouver's worse. I'm not necessarily sure that means you have to blow up the team because right now they're 2 points out of a playoff spot, and they could still get there. And actually, I think they might. We saw the way they played with desperation in the third period gives you a glimpse of what they're capable of playing.
Yeah, but really bad night for them yesterday because they lose to the Wild, and then Ottawa goes out and wins in Carolina. And then, Philly.
Their night the night before, they got beat by the Rangers in New York, and now the Rangers put a whooping on Washington the next night. So 2 teams in the playoff race, probably thinking those are 2 in the back pocket already, and both of them missed. Yeah, I mean, the race changes by the minute in both conferences right now with how tight, and I know we're going to talk about that a little bit more later, but in terms of the Wild's game, I think we've seen the Stars come back. The 4 days off really seemed to rejuvenate Matt Boldy. I never thought Kaprizov's game really was off. I just think pucks weren't going in, and now they are going in again. And as I've mentioned a few times, all the talk this season, anytime those guys go 2-3 games without scoring, it's what's wrong with them, what's wrong with them? Well, they're both sitting over 40 goals. The Wild have had 5 40-goal scorers. Not even 5 scorers, 5 seasons where a guy scored 40 in their history. And now they have these 2 guys both sitting in the top 8 in the NHL. I mean, these are 2 special goal scorers.
And they're not just goal scorers. It's just the way they compete. They as we've said before, I mean, 4th line work ethics. Look at Matt Boldy there on that one play at the end of the game where he blocks a shot. I mean, this team right now is in do not get hurt mode. They have no reason to do this.
They would be, but they're not.
Exactly.
They're
they blocked 25
like
shots yesterday. I mean, Middleton can barely walk, and he's throwing his body in front of shots. So it is an impressive character that this team has, and something that they hope makes the playoffs different for them this year.
Well, I think there's a few reasons why it's different. One is the star power. They've never had this before. Yep. They've had Boldy and Kaprizov, but now they have Boldy, Kaprizov, and Hughes. And I'd argue that you could put Faber and Eriksson Ek in for sure the star category, if not superstar category. And they've never had that before. And they've never had special teams like they have right now. If you go back to mid-January, I've got a graphic on it for tomorrow night's show. Mid-January, from that point to now, they're second in the league in combined special teams. The penalty kill has been vastly improved. I think it's 12th over that stretch. And the power play is as good as any in the league. And now, coincidentally, the team that's third on the list over that time is Dallas. So the special teams will still be a battle in that series. But right now, they've got a power play that is dangerous enough that it might only take 1 to 2 opportunities on a night for them to have an impact in the series.
And then 2023, if you remember, the reason why the Wild lost that series was special teams. It was not even strength.
And it was the same with the year before against St. Louis.
Yeah.
And now last year in Vegas, the special teams were relatively even, but this year I think is just different. I think the Wild now, the game in Detroit's a perfect example. They only had 1 power play chance prior to that. They get the one in the final 3 minutes, and you just knew they were going to find a way to score. Yeah. So it's number one, they're cashing in. But number two, they've got a discipline this year that they haven't had in previous seasons. They're number one in the league in power play opportunity differential, and that has been their undoing in those other playoff series. Against Dallas, they lost their minds, and it cost them the series. Yeah. Against St. Louis, I think they lacked discipline in that series. They were disciplined last year against Vegas, but we're still, it felt like, and again, it was Vegas kind of playing the spin game. We're the most disciplined team in the history of the NHL. We've taken fewer penalties than anybody, and it was the same game that Pete DeBoer had played in Dallas a couple of years earlier, and it worked. They got a couple calls that the Wild didn't get in that series.
Yep. Let's talk about the lineup a little bit, Anthony. And you talked about the PK and how important it could be in the series and how important it's been here, for a lot of this calendar year. And when I look at the playoffs right now and the lineup, if they are healthy going in, I see basically, almost a Urov versus Brink, and Foligno in there as well. Like I just think that most likely, if I had to pick right now, I think Brink. So now we're going back to 2 pods ago. Yeah. Actually, maybe
you
last.
You got a different opinion on this. But this one I'm
right.
A row.
This one I'm right. Like I do think Brink's now in a bit of a issue, and here's my rationale for that one. Is the Urov, Tarasenko, and Trenyan do have some chemistry together. And the problem if you play Brink instead of Urov is then you are guaranteeing that Nick Foligno or Michael McCarron is your third line center, which I don't think is the way to go in the playoffs. Now, if it's Brink, if it's Urov in the lineup, now you have Nick Foligno out. Okay, that's fine. But the one thing that I do think that has been a better thing about the PK is that he's basically not taking PK draws anymore. When he plays on the third unit on their PK rotations, he's pretty much coming on the ice on the fly. Where Nick Foligno, you could put him out there for a draw and he's most likely going to have a chance to win it. I think the faceoffs is an issue with Urov, but I don't think they just want to pull him out of the lineup.
Well, it's one of those three for sure, because I think you're going to start with McCarron. You're for sure going to start with Trenyan and Marcus Foligno, and Tarasenko obviously is in. So that's 4 of your bottom 6. To me, it appears I kind of think they'll start with Brink, and Urov might be the odd man out. But I think it comes down to Urov or Nick Foligno. And I think right now you're seeing internal competition. All of these guys have played. Well, this is the best Urov has played all season, I think, in terms of complete game. But Brink allows you to have a third line that's got a little bit more punch on it. He and Tarasenko together have been decent. I agree with you in that you end up with a Nick Foligno or a McCarron as your third line center, which is probably not ideal. But I've really liked the 2 Folignos and Trenyan on the fourth line. It's been an identity line, and Urov's faceoffs have been an issue. Going into the game, the last broadcast we had was Ottawa on Saturday, and going into that game, there were 93 centers who had taken 600 or more faceoffs. He was number 93. Mm-hmm. And I with how important faceoffs and possession is, I don't know how many draws you want him taking in a series against a good faceoff team in Dallas, assuming that they're healthy. So I think you're going to end up you're going to want Nick Foligno and McCarron taking more of those draws anyway. Now, with Urov, it does give you the chance to throw 2 centers on the same line, and I don't think you'll see the same lineup in the bottom 6 from start to finish in the series. So I think depending on how things go, you may see some guys juggle around a little bit. But my guess is that first game, I have a feeling that Nick Foligno will be in. And it's just a guess. So I haven't really talked to John Hines about it, but I think it's down to those 3 guys for 2 spots. And my guess is that Urov might be the odd man out game 1.
And then, are you fine with McCarron or Nick Foligno then on the third line?
Well, only by default. Mm-hmm. But that's what I'm saying is I don't think you'd necessarily see the same lineup start to finish in a series unless you just were rolling for 4 games. Wouldn't shock me if in game 2 you saw Urov in and either one of Nick Foligno or McCarron out of the lineup. I think they've all brought something to the table, and Nick Foligno's been a big part of the penalty kill, but the penalty kill was already trending in that direction before he came along. But there's a benefit to having another veteran that, even though Nick Foligno's career hasn't been full of deep postseason runs, he's been through big games. He's been in big Stanley Cup playoff games. And I have a feeling they defer to the veteran first and give him the first crack in that. But I also think this game in Dallas coming up this week becomes a lot more of a measuring stick than it would have been. Let's say the Wild had only won one of these three in this recent stretch, or that they were going down there 4 points out. And I don't think then you'd necessarily even put a lot of weight on that game. But I think now you might be going into that game with a chance to overtake the Stars in the divisional standings. So I have a feeling that might be now a game where you look at some specific matchups and say, how do I match up with these guys? How do these guys on the kill look against that power play? Those kind of opportunities.
Because I think a week ago they probably would have said, you know what, we're not going to play our big guys, and now it's. I mean, look, home ice is huge right now, and for two reasons. One, historically they don't play great down there, and two, you get those matchups, and if you're at home, you that's just absolutely
matchups
massive.
Are going to be key in this series. Face-offs are going to be key in the series. Special teams are going to be key. There's a lot of them, and I think there's a big advantage to being at home. But the only thing I would say is there's also a little bit of pressure on the team at home, and there's a part of me that wouldn't mind seeing Minnesota start on the road, because I think you have a chance to go down there. A split on the road is a win, where a split at home feels like a loss.
Right.
And if you start at home and you don't get both wins, and now you go to Dallas in a 1-1 spot, the series could go the wrong direction. I've always felt like it's that in an evenly matched series.
Although your claim to fame was 2014, I remember those until Game 7, the home team won every single game.
That's right.
Yeah.
I don't know why that's my claim to fame, but
because of that goal call,
highlight of my career.
Highlight of your career. That's all you're known for, is that goal call. So but what you just said to me is interesting, because I do think the plan, and as I wrote today, everybody has plans, but they have a tendency to change. And, they were going to basically rotate guys in and out of the lineup the last 3-4 games of the season. In fact, they signed a kid named Viking Gustafsson Neuberg today to an ATO. And from what I gather is they're going to sign him to a contract that starts this season probably on Thursday morning. And if that happens, the goal was to get him into a game in Nashville, St. Louis, or home against Anaheim. And obviously, if home ice is in the offing, I can't see that happening now.
I mean, and it all could change.
Yeah.
I mean, if the Wild go down there and lose in Dallas, and now home ice is basically gone, I think you'd see a very different lineup: Nashville, St. Louis, and Anaheim. And I talked to Ryan Carter and Wes Walls about this a little bit. And Karts was in a different spot, because during the deepest playoff runs he's had, he was a fringe player anyway. But I asked them about what you would want as a player. Like, how important is it to feel like you're absolutely on top of your game? How important is it to get, for some of the guys who are still new to the organization, to get extra reps with your line? And in this case, you have a pretty good idea that it's going to be the Kaprizov, Zuccarello, Hartman line. You have a pretty good idea it's going to be the Boldy, Ek, Johansson line. Those guys don't need another night playing together. But do you feel better about yourself if you just keep the pedal to the metal right to the finish? And the Wild have the benefit of ending their season a couple days before some other teams. So if you play your last game on the 14th and the first playoff game isn't until the 18th, do you really need more rest than those 3 days in between? There's the risk of injury for sure, but anytime you start talking about trying to play carefully, that seems to be when the injuries happen. If it's me, I'd be really tempted to just say, look, this is how we're playing the game. The last thing we want is to take the foot off the gas in one of these games before the finish.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Let's go to questions. If you have a question, come on up to the mic, grab some swag after you ask your question, and we'll go.
You've heard me talk about the Onyx Hunt app on here for years. Well, make sure you download the Onyx Fish app as well, because before you even pull the boat out of the garage, you can sort lakes by species, trophy potential, and keeper potential, so you're not just guessing and you're going out with a plan. You could also use the Onyx Fish app to filter walleye, bass, panfish, whatever you're chasing, and see species abundance and size data so you actually know what's in the lake before you launch. Everything you need to get there and get on fish is all in one app. Boat ramps, lake access points, public versus private land, points of interest like bait shops and camping. It's all built into the app. No more scrambling around 3 different apps or outdated reports. Onyx Fish gives you the proven fishing area data and local insights that used to take years to learn. So you could do a decade of knowledge all in about 10 minutes. So download OnX Fish on the App Store or visit onxmaps.com/fish. Spring fishing is here. Go find a lake you've been driving past for years and finally find out if it's worth the launch. You've heard me for years talk about my Connecticut water treatment system in my house. Well, many homeowners don't realize how much hard or poor quality water affects your daily life. Issues include cloudy water, bad taste, buildup on fixtures, dry skin, appliance wear, everything. Well, I have your solution, and it's Aquarius Home Services. They are your authorized independent Connecticut dealer. Connecticut systems provide worry-free water throughout your entire home. Systems right now start at $9.95 per month for the first 3 months. It's $9.95 per month for the first 3 months. Their technicians will come to your home and provide a free in-home water quality testing analysis. Aquarius handles everything from your testing to your installation. One call and your problem is solved. You can enjoy spotless dishes, softer clothes, smoother, softer skin and hair, worry-free drinking water right from your faucet. That means no more plastic water bottles, no more water cans, everything. You'll be surprised also how little salt it uses. Visit right now or book your services at AquariusHomeservices.com. That's AquariusHomeservices.com, earning the right to be recommended. That's Aquarius Home Services. And don't forget to tell them that Russo sent you.
Are you looking to move a little easier and feel better day to day? Stretch Lab can help. Stretch Lab is the leader in one-on-one assisted stretching with locations across the Twin Cities. Every session is customized, whether you're chasing a loose puck, grinding through men's league, or just trying to keep up with the game. It's not just recovery, it's mobility, prevention, and performance. Tight hips, sore back, it's all about staying in the game, whatever your game looks like. Don't sit this shift out. Book your first stretch today and feel the difference.
Question.
Actually, I've got 3 questions. First of all, when the playoffs start, FanDuel is still going to be broadcasting the games, correct?
We will broadcast the first round.
First round.
Right.
Okay, now, during the first round, will we get blackouts on the major networks?
I'm not sure. I know during the regular season, the way it works is they have a maximum number of games they can take. And if they exceed that, which they did with the Wild this year, then they can exceed it. This year, the number was 13, I believe. They can exceed that. So I think they took 16 Wild games. But then there were 3 that we were allowed to do that they had to black out in our market. So for the playoffs, that used to be the case. They had to black it out here, but could show it everywhere else. But I think a couple of years ago, they were still on in our market. So I don't know the answer to it for this year. I do know, I heard last week at least, I don't know for sure that it's true, that they could only take one in our series exclusively that then we wouldn't be able to do at all. In past years, there was a St. Louis series a few years ago, they took 2 out of the 6 games, because it used to be as long as they put it in their national window on the weekend that we couldn't even do it side by side. But I think there's a limit to 1 for that now this year. And based on the way the playoffs are going, if the teams that make it in the East or look like they might make it in the East get in, I think those are the type of games they'll take just because of bigger media markets than Minnesota-Dallas, even though Minnesota-Dallas might be the most competitive series in the first round.
Right. Okay. Secondly, the Wild have had kind of lacked a killer instinct this year. When they had teams on the ropes in several games this year, they seem to just fall back. Like Detroit's a classic example. Thank God Patrick Kane took that stupid penalty, or we would have probably gone into overtime. But that being said, do you think without that killer instinct consistently, do we really have a chance to beat Dallas or let alone Colorado? When we let teams off the hook as easy as we do?
Well, we have a chance, yes, is the short answer to the question. But I'd have to look it up. It's been a while since I dug into it. I think fans remember when their own team lets a lead get away. They don't realize it happens everywhere. And it's kind of like goaltending, where every market you go to, they say, oh, yeah, we love this guy, but he gives up more soft goals than anybody in the league. It's because they watch him 82 nights, and they only see our guy 3 times. And when you watch the same team, you see the flaws like that more often. And Minnesota's let some leads get away this year, there's no doubt. And they've but they've also come from behind a lot to overcome leads. I think their number's about the same. I'd have to look it up to see. I think it was in February we had a graphic on the number of 2-goal leads that were either overcome, and then the number of games that even though you still won the game, you had to go to overtime to win it because you let a lead get away. And the Wild were in the middle of the pack, so I don't know that it's more prevalent for the Wild than it is for anybody else. And I'm going to do some digging here over the next few days into the specifics of some of these stats against playoff teams, because I've always thought it was interesting going in. There are teams that have great records because they've more effectively and efficiently beaten up on bad teams. The Wild have been the opposite this year. They're the best team in the league against the top 3 in every division.
Oh, they
They're,
are.
I think, number 2 in the league against playoff teams. So I think their game translates better into the postseason than it has in the past.
Okay. And lastly, I was wondering, during an attempted shootout or a penalty shot, has Zuccarello ever attempted to pass?
No, he has not. Wow.
No, if there was a guy that would do it, it would be him. But
Thank you very much.
yeah.
Could you imagine if they had you see at scrimmages, like the guy chasing, like he might just do a drop pass. Yep. What's up?
Hi. I guess I was just curious on your thoughts on Gus's play recently. Just watching from the TV, at least, it kind of reminds me of how he was at the start of Olympics. Just his demeanor seems a little different. And if you guys agree, do you think like the Wild will sit him for a couple games, let him get some energy, or just your thoughts?
Well, I think they're going to go with a split rotation here down the stretch, and maybe that'll do it. I definitely think he's lost focus in some of these games. I mean, he's had some really good games, like right after the Olympics, which I was impressed with because it felt like there was no hangover from the disappointment of essentially being benched. I mean, not even just benched, like just sent to the press box. It was crazy that he didn't even back up those last games for Team Sweden. But I agree with you that definitely. I mean, he's given up some real tough goals lately, and Wally just seems to be playing better. I still think that come playoff time, for the most part, he's been really good for the Wild. His numbers are actually really good, and I think that just that veteran experience is probably why he's definitely your game one starter. The question is, how big's the leash, Anthony? And when you have a goalie as good as Wally back there, I mean,
yeah, I think Gus starts game one, and I don't know that I'd say any concern about how he's playing. And I mean, and Volstead, I thought was really good on this trip, but he prior to his last 2 starts, he hadn't won since the end of January. So
Right.
it's not like there's been a guy nipping at his heels. The other thing I'd say is the Wild goaltending over the course of the year, and I know you had posted some stuff about save percentage here over the last couple of days. If you only count when goalies are in goal, so you eliminate empty net situations, the Wild have the best save percentage in the NHL. So number 1 with these 2 guys. And I think you start with Gus. I don't know that I'd necessarily call it a leash or a short leash or anything, but I just think you've played both of them. You've established that you trust both of them. I'd be surprised if you didn't see both of them in the first round series.
Thank you.
Yep, Bruce.
Yep. So, Anthony, you actually sort of touched on my question briefly, so I'm going to rephrase it a little bit. In just in regards to Brock Faber. So, you mentioned that you'd make an argument that Brock Faber might be a star in this league. Faber currently stands 9th in goals, 12th in assists, 13th in points, 5th in time on ice, 7th in plus minus. He's played every game this year and only missed 4 games in the last 3 seasons. I would agree. I think this guy is a star as well. So, and I throw this part to Michael too. You can answer that, Anthony. And from Michael's perspective, what is the NHL? What do the writers think about? What does the NHL think about this guy? I mean, I think he's a star. Maybe Anthony does too. But what do the league think about this
and
guy?
I just want to clarify. Like, I think he's a star for sure. I was saying like maybe not a superstar yet, but he's for sure a star player. And I'd say he's a borderline superstar defenseman in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that anybody in the game respects the heck out of him. It's fans from other teams, and sometimes even the analytical people that are the ones that throw shade at him. Especially earlier this year, he had a bad month of October. That's it, and then he basically fell headfirst on the knife in an interview with me, And from that point on, his numbers are absolutely spectacular. He could play a million minutes. I think he gets sometimes he tries to play exactly like Quinn, which I don't think they want him to do. But he's a freaking linebacker on ice. I mean, he's just a monster. When you get him out of in a physical situation too. He's a lot like Charlie McAvoy. McAvoy's maybe a little more physical. I think Brock's a little more offensive. But he is, he's a really good player. I mean, the Wild are lucky to have him.
Thanks, guys.
Question.
Yeah, thanks for coming out and do this here at Tuttle's. But wanted to ask your opinion on the Wild's secondary scoring. We've seen Tarasenko and Hartman, a lot of nice points and goals lately, and obviously it's really important going to the playoffs because the superstars get a lot of the attention. So wanted to get your thoughts on how they've been doing, but also who are you hoping to see a little bit more from, and as we head into the final stretch in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, their offense. It's kind of what we were talking about at the beginning. I mean, it's why deciding between Brink and maybe a Nick Foligno. Like Brink has that offensive dimension to him, creates plays. I thought his last game at home he was outstanding. He did everything but score with Urov and Tarasenko. So that's what I think you're going to see in the playoffs is they're going to have to decide, all right, if you go with a heavy lineup, that's fine. But if it doesn't work, then you at least know you got Brink or Urov there. I'd love to see more from a Marcus Foligno offensively. I think he's probably the one guy that Trenton is what he is. Nick obviously hasn't scored yet, but he plays a really smart game. But Marcus has the ability to put pucks in the net, and it just, and up until he got hurt, he was doing a really good job of it. I mean, he got hurt right after that hat trick.
Yeah, I think it depends on that line. If that line ends up being the two Folignos and Trenton, I don't see him scoring much, but I think the play of Ryan Hartman has been maybe the most important thing to see for the Wild, and he's been scoring, but he's been more disciplined. The last 4 years, he averaged, we just talked about this the other day, he averaged 83 penalty minutes, and you throw in suspensions as well. This year, he had 44 going into that game. Now, he ended up taking a penalty, as we were talking about it on the air that night, but his game has been so much more disciplined, and right now, this is it has the feel of the playoff Hartman these last few games. And if they've talked for years, like, why can't we see that more over the course of the year? I think now you're seeing it, and he's got a creativity to him. He's a first-round pick. He's got a great skill set, and if you're going to make a run, he has to be contributing. Tarasenko, to me, is kind of a bonus because he's going to be on the third line. He's going to be on the second power play. And he can score a little, but he isn't going to be a guy that you look to carry your offense. Where Hartman playing with Kaprizov and Zuccarello, he's got to be a part of that line carrying the load.
I would 100% agree. I saw a great clip on, I don't know what podcast Billy was on the other day, but Guerin said that Hartman shows up to the rink in a bad mood. And it is so perfectly said. And that's what you want come playoff time from him. The one thing about Ryan Hartman, man, every single postseason that he has played for the Wild, he's produced and he's been one of their best players. And he did that on one knee against Dallas a couple 3 years ago. So I think he's going to have a monster playoff. Before Ken, we throw the mic to you, I did want to introduce our new thing that we're going to have every single week on the show, and that is the Stretch Lab Tight Take of the Week. And Anthony, what is your big take this week?
Well, I thought, to me, it seemed to make sense to look ahead. When we do the show next week, we'll probably know the playoff field. Mm-hmm. We know where the Wild are going. Colorado is going to be in. We know the Utah is going to be the number one wild card. Anaheim and Vegas almost certainly in the West. So I thought, let's look at who do you think the final teams in? So the second wild card in the West. And then in the East, I guess it would be the second wild card and the third team in the Metro, because Pittsburgh it looks like they're in as the second team, but there's a spot there. So the tight takes of the week will be the picks for those. And I guess we can start in the West. I think Nashville grabs that second wild card spot in the West. They got a big game. We're taping the show on a Monday night. They've got a big game against Los Angeles, but they've had a great trip. They got a shootout win against LA. Then they ended up beating San Jose, the teams they're battling with. I think it's amazing the run they've been on lately.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know if we want the tight take of the week every week to be me agreeing with you. That is not fun. But I agree with you.
We could ask you who you think the last guy out for the Wild will be, because that changes by the minute.
Yeah, I agree. We should do that every week. I agree with you, Nashville. How about the East?
East, I think Philadelphia grabs the third spot in the Metro, and I'm going to say Detroit somehow gets the ship righted and grabs the second wild card spot. I know right now they're either a point or two behind Ottawa, but the way they played when they had some urgency in the third period, it just looked like a team that might be able to crank it up a level. And John Gibson's been pretty good for him most of the year. I know he's struggled down the stretch here. I think he's been pulled in 2 of his last 5 starts, but I like their schedule too. So I'm going to take Detroit. Philly is the third team in the Metro, and Detroit as the second wild card.
Okay, I'll go Philly as the third team in the Metro. I 100% agree with you. I will go Islanders. I know they've played one more game than Ottawa. I just don't trust Ottawa's goaltending, where Sorokin is one of the best in the league. They just fired Patrick Waugh. Peter DeBoer's in there. I think they're going to get the coaching bump. I'm going to go with the Islanders.
All right. Well, we'll be able to evaluate it next week, but we should talk quickly about the 2 late coaching changes. How about the fact that you got Vegas, a team in the playoffs, and the Islanders, who at the time were in the playoffs, making changes with 8 and 4 games left in a regular season?
It's crazy. I was covering that 2000. I was in New Jersey when they got rid of, I think it was Robbie Fatorik, and Larry Robinson took over, and they won a cup. I think that was Vegas taking a page out of that book with Bruce Cassidy. They were not playing well. We had been talking about how they were not playing well. The Patrick Waugh thing completely caught me off guard, because they've been trending downward for a while. And I do think that this was twofold. I think this was Matthew Darsh basically saying, we want to make the playoffs, and we're going to go get a coach that, by the way, goes to the conference final seemingly every year. But the other thing is that we want to jump on him before somebody else does this offseason. And that could potentially, what he would think is, you're not going to fire your coach in a playoff series. So,
right.
All of a sudden you could strike out on a guy that you want to bring there.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add, which I agree with all that, the only thing I'd add about the Vegas situation is that you could sense that there was something happening beneath the surface there where the guys weren't happy. But I also, if you look at their game a little bit closer, there hasn't been much wrong with their game other than goaltending.
Yeah.
They're like 3rd in the league in shot differential over the course of the season. If they had any goaltending whatsoever, they'd be a no-brainer at the top of the Pacific. I will put some of that responsibility, though. Remember, they had Logan Thompson there, and Bruce Cassidy couldn't see eye to eye with him, and decided to hitch his wagons to Aiden Hill instead, and sent Thompson off. Thompson's been terrific for the last couple of years in Washington. Yeah. So part of that, I guess you have to put on Cassidy, because he's the guy who said, Aiden Hill's my guy. Yeah. And now they can't.
The only thing, though, like to your point, 100%, but Aiden Hill did win them a cup after he went with the guy. But you're right, that spelled the end, and there was an irony that he gets fired the day after Washington is there. By the way, these foam pucks are awesome. When Anthony's talking, you just squeeze and get some of that stress out. How about Jersey today firing? Tom Fitzgerald, it was an amicable departure. I texted with Tom. He's in great spirits. So I wonder if he's going to wind up in Nashville, where he was the first ever captain of the Predators. But how about them making that move today? And now you wonder if that opens up the door again, maybe to a Jack Hughes trade this summer. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know. There's been some interesting switches, and go back to Buffalo's GM switch, and since then they're the best team in the NHL.
Yeah, it's crazy. Ken,
I should have come up earlier, because you just anticipated 2 of my questions, which was about Cassidy and.
Well, luckily you're a counselor. You can think on your feet.
Exactly. So one question would be...
There's no way you only had one thought in your head.
So one question would be, how quickly does DeBoer teach the Islanders to dive like he taught the Stars?
Yeah. Do you know that I was talking to an agent the other day and said how fitting it was that they brought in Bunting, because it's like they're doubling down on their style.
Okay, so second question, Wild related. And I do think it's a great combo, but are they going to stick with Hughes and Faber rather than fooling around with what they were doing before, since it would look like, Hughes and Spurgeon, they just don't have the physicality to stay together?
I think they're going to start with Hughes and Faber, but what John Hines wanted to do from the deadline to now was take a look at different combinations. That was up front and on the blue line, just to know what you have in your holster if things aren't going right. And Hughes and Faber have been great together. They've also given up a lot more. Like Brodin and Spurgeon right now, we have a graphic in tomorrow night's show for over the course of the season among defensive pairs. I think I cut it off at 300 minutes. They're number 3 in the league in terms of fewest goals against per 60. And it's about half of what Hughes and Faber give up. Now, Hughes and Faber score more too. The goal differential is about the same. They're both about 0.75 goals per 60 more than they give up. But I think Hines wanted to see, what if down a stretch I want to shut somebody down with Brodin and Faber? How do Hughes and Spurgeon look together? So it was just to see what other options you might have. But I think the intent is to start with Hughes and Faber and Brodin and Spurgeon, where you get a little bit of a split of some size, that you split it up a little bit between those two. But he was doing the same thing with the forwards. I want to see what Tarasenko looks like with Boldy and Eck. I want to see what Brink looks like with Tarasenko. All of those things, just so he knows that even if it's within a game, let alone like game to game, we're down a goal, down 2 goals, up 2 goals, want to make a change into the third period. Here's what I've got.
Yeah. And, I don't think he was screwing around. I think that's exactly what he was doing, is that he was just trying to experiment to see. So come playoff time, it wasn't the first time that these guys, that there's some familiarity there. I was just at this Halo analytical conference out in Denver, which you would have loved, by the way. It was really fascinating. I learned a lot. But that was Jared Bednar, the Colorado coach, was basically saying that he's doing the same thing, that Marty Necas wants to play with Nathan McKinnon and vice versa, but he wanted to see Necas with Brock Nelson and so on and so on. So I think that all coaches, when you have the benefit of being locked into a playoff spot, it gives you that opportunity to do that.
And it's been interesting for these big 3 in the Central because they've been so separated from the rest of the division for this entire second half, where it was a foregone conclusion they were going to be in the top 3. It's given all of them an opportunity, number one, to let injured guys get healthy, but also to do some experimenting, see what those combinations might be, and not just think about them and wonder about them or see them in practice, but to be able to see them in game situations.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, you know what Ken's claim to fame is?
Well, I've got a few ideas, but
he's
shortest guy ever to ask a question.
So if you are president of the Marcus Johansson fan club, he's vice president.
Oh, nice. So he's an astute judge of hockey ability.
This guy must sit on Twitter and just search Johansson and just goes after every fan that has the audacity to say anything negative about Johansson. It's like if I didn't know Ken, I would think it was you. I would have thought it was your burner account.
Well, nice, Ken. You've gained some credibility in my book tonight.
Yes. Mr. Movember, what's up?
Yes, it's good to be here. Thank you guys again so much for doing these. It's so entertaining. It's fun. It's great to hear your insights and see the camaraderie, we'll say, between you. I just was wondering also then, as we go into the final few games here, if the Wild, there's nothing we'd rather see than the Wild be home, have home advantage in the playoffs. But if they don't earn that, which defenseman in the regular rotation, first 6 right now, would you see getting the opportunity for a rest as they go in, or will any?
You mean down in the final games?
In the final games, if we're out of it.
I think Brodin, Hughes, Spurgeon, I think those are probably the guys.
Yeah, they all might. I mean, right now, Bogosian is banged up, so I don't know that they were going to find out more when they got home, but I don't expect to see him.
I don't think we're going
to see him Tuesday night.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll see him between now and the end of the season, if it would benefit him to rest a little.
He has had the most unbelievable luck this year with the same essential injury. It's beyond belief.
The luxury they have right now is that with Petrie as an extra guy, and Damon Hunt, who has certainly shown. I mean, there are a lot of teams,
and Viking Gustafsson Nyberg,
but a lot of teams that are going into the playoffs right now for whom Damon Hunt would be in their top 6.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for Minnesota, he's a luxury because he right now looks like he's number 8.
He's so fast.
His skating ability shows up almost every night. So I think they've got a nice spot here where they can number one, assuming that the home ice thing goes away, or maybe they clinch it, and then you can rest a couple guys. I think they'd love to give those guys a day or two off between now and the end.
They want to play Damon. Like this guy hasn't played in a month. If you're going to need him in the playoff, you don't want it to be his first game in 2 months.
Well, for sure. But I also think they took advantage of that 4 days off, had 2 full days off, and then 2 practices, and you could see how it recharged guys. I think they are looking ahead knowing that between the end of the regular season and the playoffs, they're going to have a couple days where guys are going to be able to recharge that way. So if they aren't able to get guys out of a lineup, I don't think it would be the end of the world. But I think they would love to. It's been a grind for those guys that were part of the Olympics. There hasn't been a break for them really all season long. And I think we're starting to see that wear down on them a little bit. I think they'd love to just, if they could, give them a couple games to just shut it down for a week and be fresh for the start of the playoffs.
Do you mind if I make a little announcement?
Sure, go for it.
Through Movember Foundation, every year, all the NHL teams get to compete, and we handle this with the Brown Gloves. They get to compete for the Mustache Cup. And our team raised almost $50,000 for men's health through Movember, and our Minnesota Wild won the Mustache Cup. So
congrats.
This is unveiled here at Worst Seats in the House.
Nice.
Men's health first.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yep.
I'll let you touch it later.
Yeah. You don't want to touch it until you win it, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Final couple minutes of the show. Question.
Yeah, I just want to know, when it's all said and done, who lifts the cup first?
Oh, well, I would assume Jared Spurgeon.
Yeah.
Who does he give it to next? I would say Jonas Brodin.
You think so?
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of an interesting question. I hadn't really thought about that.
I would bet anything it's Brodin. Yeah, I mean, he's been the second most tenured guy on the team. Yeah. Then it goes to Marcus Foligno. Then to Kirill.
Yeah, Kirill actually was the guy who popped into my head.
I think he gives it to Rhodes.
Yeah, we'll have plenty of time to think about that. We have what we need.
Actually, I think what they should do is they should try this with maybe a water bottle after the first round. Just they finally get past the first round and they parade around the
we
ice.
Have 15 wins. We have 15 wins to think about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Before number 16.
Yeah,
that is an interesting question.
Rhodes, 1,000,000%. I don't even think it's a question. Yeah.
All right, we'll see. He'll change his mind on next week's show.
No. As long as he's healthy. Question.
If you were a team looking for a general manager, would you consider Kevin Adams because the Buffalo Sabres made the playoffs?
Yeah.
Or is he more representative of the teams that didn't?
Well, when Keith Pelly was talking the other day about, wanting somebody with, ability to think outside the box, analytics, things like that, that's apparently one of Adams' strengths when he was there. I covered Kevin Adams as a player. He was one of my favorite players that I've ever covered. Obviously, things didn't go well in Buffalo, but clearly, he must have known what he was doing because we've always said, Anthony, that if you look at the talent, and they just couldn't get it together. And then
got set back with the whole Eichel thing, and yet it didn't really seem to knock them off track much. The roster was always good enough to compete. They just couldn't put it together.
Absolutely. It's a good question. Other little housekeeping items. Charlie Stramel.
Did you have one? Was there one last question?
Yeah.
Maybe he gave up.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, if you have questions, come on up. We're not closing the podcast right this second. But Charlie Stramel, I do believe that he is going to sign pretty imminently. The question has always been, is he going to burn the year or not burn the year? The broken ankle changed a lot of things. The biggest thing that happened also is with the new CBA. If you signed and you burned a year this year, you're under the current NHL rules for this CBA. But if you sign for next season, you're under the rules for next season. And once he broke his ankle, I do think that suddenly it changed maybe the path from the agency, and they started to look like, wait a minute, is it worth signing for this year and not for next year, because he'll get a lot more money in signing bonuses, and all the numbers are different. So there are pros and cons to burning a year and not burning a year. Obviously, he's got the broken ankle. He would have been, if he signed for this year, would have been playoff eligible once he's healthy. But right now, he's hurt. So my guess is that the signing's imminent, and I do think now they've changed course and the contract would start next year. But the only thing fans need to care about from a Wild perspective is that he's not testing free agency. He has made it extremely clear, and people close to him have made it extremely clear to me that he wants to play for the Minnesota Wild and plans to sign. So I do think his signing is imminent. I think they just had to work out what's best for the player, both sides. And I think that he is going to sign at some point here in the next little while.
One of his teammates just had a big goal for Philly last night.
Was that
Mortone.
Yeah. How
Philly.
about you know what was interesting about that from Anthony, who didn't want to put Zeev Buium on the ice in overtime, is Porter Malone out there in overtime in his second. There you go, second NHL game, 5-on-3 out there. Anthony would have said you got to earn it.
You would have had to earn it.
Yeah. And he was out there.
On that team, he might be. Maybe he'd be the guy.
Yeah. How about that team? Because I will say, I was looking at the guys that are on that 5-on-3 because I was watching it live, and talk about a team that doesn't have a superstar. Like Porter might become that player, but it is impressive what that team has done. They got a lot of really good players, a coach that has really changed a lot of things up, especially in their own zone. They compete hard. It was really cool during that goal celebration seeing excited Nick Seeler out there too. Yeah,
I like the way they're playing. And there's so many of those teams, the bubble teams in the Eastern Conference that have been good in the second half. If you look at it was interesting when we were looking at there's been a lot of angst about, the Wild aren't on top of their game and everything. And we went back to the trade deadline and went back to January 1st. And since the trade deadline, the Wild, I think, are third in the West, and the only playoff team who's better than them is Edmonton over that stretch. But if you go back to the first of the year, to New Year's Eve, the best 6 teams in the league are all in the Eastern Conference. Mm-hmm. It's amazing how so many of those teams that were on the outside looking in have gone on runs of, none of them have won like 18 in a row or anything, but they've all been like 18-8. All of them are about 667 in terms of wins. It's been impressive, and that's why that race has been so much fun to watch.
All right, 2 more quickies for you. I got a text from my friend Dan that wants to know a place to go in Nashville when he's there with the going to the Wild game this weekend. Obviously, Broadway. One restaurant that I had just heard about was called the Standard. Have you eaten there, the steakhouse?
Yeah. It's not a great food town, because I think the places that have a good menu are dramatically overpriced, and it's changed. Broadway to me isn't what it used to be. It used to be kind of local hole in the wall places. Now it's a little more glitzy, but I like what's the one that's the number 820?
Oh yeah.
No, 1130 or so. It's a number 1230. That's what it is. And they've got live music in there, but the food's decent and it's not ridiculous. The steak places we've gone to, there've been a couple decent steak places, but I think they're overpriced. The one by your hotel what's that one? That's a good one. Yeah, we don't stay out there anymore in the Gulch area. But I'd go get off of Broadway, go up to Printer's Alley. There's a couple good places in Printer's Alley that are a little more kind of what old Nashville used to be. But on Broadway, Legends and Stage are my 2 favorite spots.
Yeah. Tootsie's to me is too crowded now. I like the Stage. And Legends.
But really, you walk up and down there.
Central's good too.
You walk up and down there. They're all good. I just like those type places more than the Luke Bryan's place, where it feels a little more commercialized than what I remember Nashville to be.
Yeah. I do like not that I haven't been there, but there's apparently a speakeasy with a red phone booth. Have anybody heard this? And it's like I'll be going there.
There's a good speakeasy in the hotel where we stay.
Okay. The new one?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I'll check that out.
Maybe you mention it to you before we go.
And then
you're on the trip?
Yeah, I am on this trip. Nice. And last one for you, because I haven't talked to you on the podcast about this, but I did get a couple tweets to ask you what you thought of the whole Darren Radish play in Tampa when Bobby Brink nudged him in the back and he went down and didn't get up. And all of a sudden, Vasilevsky could have covered the puck, wasn't able to. And then because Radish, after diving, didn't get up, he couldn't slide over. And they considered it goalie interference. But, to me, and this is how I feel, like the league always is worried about goalies flopping. This gave every defenseman in the league license to do the exact same thing. Like if you fall into the crease, don't even get up.
I agree with that. I thought it was interference, and when I was watching the game live, and I think I might have put that on Twitter at the time that I think they're going to call this interference.
Yeah.
I think, and I've talked to some goalies about it. I think there's
I think letter of the law was interference.
Yeah,
but it was interference because he didn't try to get up.
Right.
You know?
But once you knock a goalie off of his stance, I've talked to goalies and they say it's underappreciated how much and how long that can disrupt you. Where sometimes fans will look at it and say, "Oh, well, it was 2 seconds earlier. He had time to get back in his stance." And they've just said, "Look, you get so out of rhythm when you get bumped or you get knocked." And in that case, he couldn't cover the puck. And I thought they got the call right. But I do think there should be something looked at to say, look, you've got to make an effort to get out of the way and relieve the interference.
Well, thanks to everybody for coming on out to Tuttle's here on this Monday night. Our next live show we are hoping is going to be April 15th. And pay attention to our social media to know if it's at Tuttle's, Elsie's, or Split Rocks. Thanks to our newest sponsor, Stretch Lab. We'll be doing that gift certificate drawing in a couple minutes when we turn off the mics. Thanks to Aquarius Home Services, your local authorized dealer for Connecticut water treatment systems, Stretch Lab, and of course, On X Fish. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for coming.
So much coming